I've just finished my day and I thought I would up on here because I just wanted to talk about this particular topic, and it's about the difference between depression and being sad. And I've been getting quite a few referrals lately, and I realized that once I'm doing the diagnostic consultation, persons are presenting with issues of depression. But as we get into it, I realize that most persons who are stating that they're depressed are suffering from long-term sadness. And long-term sadness is just a really deep sadness. And we tend to go through griefs in our lives and we associate that with depression, but there's a big difference. So to start with, we know that sadness is an emotion. And yes, sadness is a component of depression, but the two are not the same. They're not the same. And I know lots of persons, when we talk about sadness, when we talk about grief, it's synonymous with death, but it's not always the case. So when we look at depression, for example, most persons who are clinically depressed or suffering from major depressive disorder have an imbalance, an hormonal, a chemical imbalance on the brain, and that is to do with their serotonins, and that's completely different to sadness. What I'll do, let me give you 3 examples of the difference between sadness and depression, because it's too often been misconstrued that when you're sad, you're depressed. No. Sometimes you're sad and sometimes you're depressed and you're experiencing sadness, but you're not always depressed. For example, with being depressed, a person who is clinically or severe or even mild depressed find it difficult to experience any form of pleasure. So when a person is sad, for example, they may be sad, they may be low in mood, but they might be able to stop, enjoy a nice meal, go to a party, have a dance, and absolutely enjoy that. And their mood can alterate and go back to being quite sad. With someone who's suffering from depression, their mood is chronic, and that low mood is constant, and it stays there. It's persistent. It's not fluctuating. It's not going up or down. Persons who are depressed, sometimes they can't even experience that sadness because they're numb. They're indifferent. They can't feel any emotions at all. When someone is sad or living with sadness, they might be able to have moments of momentarily relief from that sadness. Another thing with sadness is that persons may be sad, they may feel low in mood, but it's not affecting their self-esteem. When you're depressed, your self-esteem is very, very affected. It's very, very low most times than not, right? Another thing with sadness is that you might be able to function. You can go to work, you can function, you can get on with things. You're low in mood, you might be snappy, you might be low in energy, but you're still functioning. When you're depressed and clinically depressed, then you can't function. You can't do any of those daily routine, mundane things. You're just there. You're either flipping in between insomnia or just completely sleeping. You might be crying or to the emotions where you can't cry because you're so numb. It goes in between. And persons, I've realized, is, as I said before, living with sadness and living with long-term grief. And they're labeling that or themselves as being depressed. And you're not depressed, you're sad. And I know the buzzword of late, everybody who's coming to therapy or for psychoanalytic work is saying, oh, I want a CBT, I want cognitive behavioral therapy. And yes, that's a buzzword and that's a new trend at the moment, and everybody knows what that is, more or less. But sometimes if you're just suffering from sadness and you're not depressed, then something along psychoanalytic work would be more appropriate, because it's about finding what you're sad about. What is it you're grieving? And, you know, like I said, persons are grieving loss of past relationships, for example. They're grieving their 20s. They're grieving things they hadn't had the opportunity to do, or things they're regretting in their life. And when we talk about grief, it's not always about death. It's about loss and loss and loss and loss in our lives. And we go through our lives losing so many things on a daily basis. So once you found out that that's what you're doing, you're grieving or you're sad or you're not sure why you're sad, then it's about doing some analytical work to find out, where's that sadness coming from? What do you want to do about it and how we can go about that? And it's not necessarily about cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's not always that you're depressed. And as I said before, that yes, don't get me wrong, sadness is a component of depression and it's one of the symptoms of depression, but it's not always one in the same. All right, I hope I've made that clear. I just thought I'd just pop on here and say to you guys that it's not always, and check yourself. When you're talking about stressful events and stressful stuff and stressful events in your life may trigger some form of sadness, or it may trigger depression. But be careful how we label ourselves before we get to the root of what's actually going on for us. Right? So with the hormone imbalance with depression, at that point you may need medication. You may need to change your diet. You may need to do numerous of things to sort of balance out your emotions to get back and on track. Which with sadness, sometimes all you need to do is give it time and explore that sadness and change your mindset, right? So if you're up on here, you find this useful, go ahead and share it. Once you're on, say hi, don't be shy, and I'll be back. We'll be here in the comments, the conversation with you to see what your thoughts are. Okay, this is me. I've finished my day and I'm gonna relax and have something to eat. Alrighty, have a good one. Bye.